everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and welcome to night 4 of the Summer Mini Skein mini-series. Every night this week, I am dyeing some fade sets using various techniques on multiple different mini skein yarn bases, and honestly, we're having a lot of fun. Tonight, we are going to focus on layering colors to create a tonal-based fade set using multiple hues. And we will be using cool vat-based techniques for a lot of this project. Now, what is a cool vat and why might you want to use it? A cool vat is where you set up your yarn, your acid, your dye, and water in some liquid and then let it sit for a long period of time to slowly absorb those colors. This can, at times, help you get a more even color coverage, but it also comes in handy when you have limited pots and limited stove space and you want to create a 5 different colored set. So there are many perks to this, and I will talk more about it in a moment. But before we get into the video, please make sure you are subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. In addition to special series like this one, I always publish at least 2 new yarn dyeing videos every single week, and they are a lot of fun. So now, let's go talk about our project. We are going to dye a few different yarn bases today. We are going to dye 500 grams of the wool to dye for Donegal DK, which is 85% superwash merino, 15% neps. So these black and brown little specks that you see there. We are also going to dye 500 grams of Sheila's titanium mini skeins. This yarn is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. It's 2-ply and a lot of fun. And I thought it would be fun to play with layering colors with cool vat, with something that is that bare off-white, but then also something that is a little more oatmeal. It has a little bit more tone to it already. And honestly, I'm curious how the neps will pop on a layered color like this, because those shouldn't take up any dye. Man, I wish that there were minis of one with white neps, because that would really, really pop. But anyway, there is one more base I would like to pull in. I want to add 100 grams of that yak sock yarn that is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon. Of the 3 fiber contents, the that yak is the most different. It is a superwash merino yarn, but because it has that yak fiber in there, it'll probably absorb less dye overall when compared with the other 2, with the Donegal DK and then the titanium sock. But I thought it would just be really fun because we're going for deeper saturated tones, and I think that they will look fairly different. They might look very, very similar on these 2 bases, but they might look quite different on the that yak. And so I thought it would be fun to throw one set in there just to see how this turns out. I am going to prep the yarn for dyeing as follows. I am going to take 5 of the titanium socks, and I'm just untwisting these minis, putting them over my wrist, because I am going to keep sets of 11 mini skeins, so I guess 220 grams total all together. So this is 5 titanium. I'm going to add 5 of our Donegal tweed, and then finally 1 of the that yak. Making sure everything is nice and untwisted. There we go. And then I am going to secure this with a very, very loose zip tie. This is a lot of yarn to have, but since we're doing cool vat and hopefully we'll be moving things a lot, and we're layering colors, it's okay if the color coverage isn't even, and I can even make sure to move where the zip tie is located in between the first round of dyeing and the second round of dyeing. But now let's go pre-soak the yarn. I added all of the yarn to some plain tap water to let it soak for a couple of hours. Since we're not going for a solid, we're going for layered colors and we want tonals each time, it will be okay if the dye pot is a little crowded, but also if the yarn is not completely saturated, that is not the biggest deal because we will be dyeing it multiple times. And again, we want there to be some tonal variation, so I'm not super concerned about that. I put on my respirator mask that has P100 filters, safety glasses, and gloves, and then measured out 2.75 grams of Dharma Dark Navy. This is an acid dye, so with acid and our protein-based yarn, we will be able to start with not a dark blue, but sort of like a medium blue. It'll be more like we're starting with a gray yarn. It'll give us more of a jewel tone versus something that feels bright, especially depending on the colors that we pick. And because of the colorway that I have in my vision, I think that it would be fun to do this with a navy versus, say, doing it with black or a gray, which also would be a great option. I dissolved the dye in a non-specified volume of water. What matters here is the total amount of dye. 2.75 grams of dye will give us 0.25 grams of dye per 100 grams of yarn that we have. So this isn't a lot of dye, but navy is a very pigmented color, so that sort of factors into the whole calculation. And once again, whenever you're dealing with dry dye powder, please make sure you're wearing your personal safety equipment. I'm always wearing some kind of respirator mask and safety glasses whenever I have dry powder open. Normally, I would do this kind of thing outside, but again, it's February. So I'm on my counter and I'm actually up on a step stool to give myself some height. I could do this on the floor, but I'd rather have a spill on my protected work surface versus a spill on the floor. So that's why I'm going to do this. And now I had added more water into the Presoak. My 5-gallon bucket is about half full. And I'm going to add all the dye into here. And we're rinsing out our cup. And I actually have some more warm water from measuring out the dye. One of these days I will get myself a white bucket, although it'll get stained probably, but that way you'll be able to see what's going on in the bucket a little better. I know it's a little goofy because my spoon is tiny, but I still want to stir it up a bit. It doesn't matter a ton, it'll stir. There's still no acid in here. Which, I mean, my tap water is slightly acidic, so having no acid doesn't mean that things won't start striking quickly. All right, I've got the yarn, and this is the part where I hope I'm not gonna make a mess, or that one of my zip ties won't fail. So I'm going in, and it's not that we're trying to go for a dip dye or something, but we're dipping the yarn in, and I'm making an effort to move each one apart. Now, granted, we're not opening them per se, but I did want to make an effort so that way if they're like sort of stuck next to each other, that wouldn't cause a problem. But you can see that there is a reasonable amount of pigment in here, and some skeins are going to get more color than others, and that is okay. If I wanted the color to be more solid, then I would add more water and let it sit like this for a while. But instead, I mean, again, I don't mind if it's tonal. So let's add some acid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tablespoons of white vinegar. And we are gonna stir this by, oh goodness, lifting and putting back down. And so having it be a little crowded in here will just help. And now, well, I'm gonna cover it and let it sit for a couple days, at least 24 hours, probably more. But I am going to make sure that the bottom of my pan is really dry before I go and set it somewhere where it can be out of the way for at least 2 days, or at least 1 day, but probably closer to 2. Right, it has been 2 days, and whoa, wow, let's not forget the depth of shade that we were using, which was 0.25 grams of dye per 100 grams. And it has pretty much cleared. So taking up some water, that is looking very, very clear. I think we'll actually reuse this dye bath for some of the next parts. But coming in right now, this is really, really saturated already. You can see some of the neps there. We'll take a closer look at this in a moment, but this is a lot darker than, oh my goodness. All right, I'm gonna have to think a lot. This is a lot darker than I had expected that it would be. And I'm not just talking about the yak, which looks like it might be pretty dark. I just, overall, wow, this is really saturated. That's not very much color. Oh my goodness. I have not done like swatching different depths of shade of navy. I'm so glad I reduced it to 0.25 grams of dye per 100 grams of yarn, because I think at one point I thought about doing a half, and I was like, no, I don't want it to be too dark. Oh man. Oh man. Okay. Now this color I would still want to steam if we were gonna go ahead and leave it as it is, but we are gonna be dyeing it again, so there isn't really a reason to steam it in between. But, okay, I do see like a hint of some purpley color here in the bucket, but I think that we can use this water because there's plenty of acid in there for a lot of our subsequent dyeing. So I'm now gonna set this aside and let's look at the yarn. Okay, I've got the camera a little overexposed. That's actually probably better to prove a point. So the yak is already really, really deep. I feel like there's a chance we could see a difference with some other colors, but it might not make a huge difference because this is a little bit more than I thought. It's fine, it's fine. I think I'll just do something less subtle for the 5 colors that we're gonna pick for the next stage. It'll be fine. Oh gosh. You can still see the neps in here, which is really, really cool. I'm a little overexposed, but they do still show. I'm not sure how deep of a tweed I've seen before. And then we've got, I mean, it's beautiful tonals all around. I think that I'm not sure what I was expecting, but I guess the nice thing is that as I plan out the next colors, we can shift things, because as I add this yarn to a new bath and we see how those colors shift, if 2 colors don't look substantially different from one another, we could change that. So that is something to absolutely keep in mind. But now I am going to set this aside and we'll start thinking exactly about those colors that we want to use. I think originally I was considering going from maybe say sour apple through, not electric violet, but maybe like a peacock blue or something. So then we would end up with sort of this green, teal, and blue type colorway. But I'm now afraid that that would be a little too subtle. And I want there to be a little more variation between the colors. Now, and in debating, part of me wants to do brilliant yellow, but I actually think I'm going to stick with sour apple instead. Maybe because I like that there's a little more of a blue in there already. There is not currently blue and deep magenta, but I'm feeling a little optimistic with a sour apple, emerald green, true turquoise, electric violet, and deep magenta. And who knows, maybe if I feel like the color range is a little bit too much of a flop, then we can shift it and I can dye, I guess, another batch of a 6th color. I'd like to not do that, but yeah, this is where I'm entering a slightly riskier territory. The slight risks that I'm dealing with here involve the fact that not all of these are colors that I have swatched or anything at a 1% depth of shade. So I don't know the relationship of the intensity from our electric violet to the sour apple. I am sort of going off of what we see on the swatch card, which seems pretty even, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way that it'll be when they interact with the navy. So it might be when we do this, we might decide, okay, I need to add another gram of that sour apple in there to pump it up a little bit more. So this is something that will take a little bit of some trial and error, but I'm excited to give it a shot and to try to do a fade set this way without having, I don't know, I feel like it would be a little bit easier if, say, I was starting with 3 primaries and then I was gonna mix the various shades the way I wanted, because then I'd be going off of something I'd done before and I know a little bit more about the recipes and the proportions, and I feel like that might be a little easier than dealing with pre-mixed dyes that I've mostly used playing with in powder form versus in a measured, planned, comparative way. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but this is why I'm nervous. I put on my P100 respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves and measured out 2.2 grams of each of the 5 colors. I picked this number because we will be dyeing 220 grams of each color, and so therefore this, I guess, proportion made a lot of sense. I didn't worry about the proportion of dye to liquid as I dissolved each of the dyes in some warm tap water and stirred it up. I want the dye well dissolved, but again, since we will be adding all of this dye onto each of the batches of yarn, what is more important here is the total amount of dye present going onto the yarn versus the concentration of that dye. Unfortunately, I don't have 5 of these containers I use for cool vats, so I'm gonna have to get a little creative. But right here I have 3 plastic shoe boxes and I've put 6 cups of the water that we use to dye the navy color into each one. And now I'm coming over with our yarn and adding it in. So in each of these, again, we have 220 grams of yarn, and I am tempted to add more water. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 2 cups of plain tap water that is also going to be reused water from a Presoak, but this time there's no vinegar in here. I'm going to add that to each of these as well. So now we have 8 cups of water. And I want to start with our 3 colors in the middle. So I want to start with our Intense Iris. And I'm going to take this, pour about half of the dye in and then massage it through our yarn and see how much of a difference we can see right now. So already this one is gonna probably be the most navy because this is already a very blue purple. It's okay if it's uneven, but there's enough volume here that I can help it get through. Now, since there's acid in here already, things might start striking fairly quickly. But what I'm hoping to see is that comparing the iris to our true turquoise, and again, I'm adding about half. I'm hoping to feel a difference, and I absolutely do. Absolutely do. I'm not sure how much on camera it's standing out, but this is much more of a rich blue, and our purple is looking really indigo. So that so far is a good sign. Now, the question will be, should I add the rest of the dye that I have? And probably, but we're starting slow and building our way up. And so now I've got the emerald green. I'm adding approximately half. And so the reason why I started this way, I started with the quote middle color and two ends, because I wanted to see if the colors look different with just soaking up some of that liquid, then they will likely look different once they've absorbed that dye. So seeing, and yeah, I guess on camera you guys can see it too, seeing three drastically different hues here is extremely encouraging for me. Now, man, only using half the dye, and I mean, that's approximate. I think I do want to go ahead and add the rest. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. So again, we'll do this. Oh, there's like a glob of dye in here. That we don't want. We will be steam setting everything eventually, or actually we might also be immersion dyeing some of our colors as well. Because as I said, I don't have enough containers. I thought I had 5, but I guess I only have 3. But since I have this, then we'll be able to compare this with the 2 colors we create for either end. So the one color I'm the most nervous about is this true turquoise, because this can be a somewhat notorious color. Okay, and I do have some that I don't think I mixed these super well. I had some that wasn't dissolved, but I'm not going to pour that in here. I'm not going to worry about that. We are still going by feel, even though I did weigh out the total amount of dye. I kind of wish I had like a mini skein here instead of using this paper towel to wipe my hands, just because this is so unbelievably beautiful. Okay, the rest of the green, and again, looks like we're gonna have some leftovers to play with later. This green is gorgeous. Gorgeous. Oof. These colors are so deep. I really wonder if like we'll be able to tell a difference on the That Yak or not. But this is just the beginning here. So what I'm going to do now is I am carefully going to transfer this true turquoise yarn into my stainless steel dye pot. I'm not going to start heating it up now. I'm going to let it sit in there, but I'm going to use that as a vessel for this. So I'm going to transfer all of this in there, rinse out the container, and then we'll come back with the empty shoebox. All right, I set up a new bath the exact same way. 6 cups from the leftover navy, plus 2 from some plain tap water. Now I'm gonna add our 220 grams of navy yarn. And you can absolutely see a difference between this and the purple already. The one I removed is in the middle, so I'm hoping that our deep magenta, ooh, that is not looking that dissolved. Did that crash out? Uh-oh. Well, good thing that this is one that I was planning on adding to another pot. This looks like it was, this is weird. I have played with this color a fair amount, and right now it is looking reminiscent to those videos that sometimes you see on Facebook where they do the acrylic pours. It's sort of going through in rivers like that. Huh. Either way, this is feeling like a different color from our purple. I'm gonna add the rest. This is weird. This is really weird. Okay, it is definitely though going more of a reddish purple, which is what I wanted. I have no idea why it's looking like that. Good thing this is the one I was gonna put in the pot to then reset this like I did for the turquoise. So again, I'm not gonna be heating things for a while, but I will be letting the yarn sit in that pot, and that way, I mean, I think I'll eventually want to heat this one directly. This is weird. But I will be right back with another reset container. So I'm distracted by the dye acting a little weird, but this color is sufficiently different from our more purple or more now indigo color. So I think that that's all really, really good. We're reset again with 6 cups of water from the navy dyeing, and then 2 cups from another soak. And here is our last navy set of yarn. Is it odd that I already forgot a little bit what I was doing and I stepped over here and I was like, oh look, the water is pretty much clear already. Forgetting, of course it is. But now let's take our sour apple, which I'm a little afraid it's gonna look a lot like that green. Okay, well that's all of it. Although, will it be, I mean, it's a different green. This, it's definitely a different green. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I actually might like it, but it might feel too similar. I think I was hoping that this green would feel more teal, and actually it does. This is definitely a bluer green. This is a more yellow green. In terms of pigmentation, it's definitely not as pigmented as the other colors. So now, oh man, I'm a little unsure of what I want to do. Do I want to add a little more yellow, or do I want to go the other direction and add some blue to it to make it more of a teal? I might regret this if I do it. I really might regret it. But I'm considering adding this to here because I feel like if I added, because I don't want, yeah, I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna sort of hold my breath. All right, I'm gonna go dissolve water in here. This might be a big mistake. The reason why this might be a really big mistake is that this might turn this into being just like that green versus bringing us more of a teal. But let's see. That's a lot of blue. I mean, if you look at the color of the liquid, this is more teal than that one. It's more green, but I feel like it needs, shoot. I feel like it needs more blue. So I feel like there's still a hint more I can get out of here. Okay, and I'm gonna go over to the blue pot and swipe some. Okay, that blue over there was really, really intense. And I can borrow some to shift this more. Okay, this is actually feeling more of like a teal turquoise color. I'm not sure if it is sufficiently different from the emerald. I might want to do one more stolen swipe of blue. Because I'm like, that blue is blue enough. There we go. Now, is this going to be hugely different from the green? Not necessarily. So we'll see. It might mean that the pinkish purple is going to feel a little weird. Let me get on a paper towel what all the different colors are so far. Okay, here is our tableau of colors. And right now, we've the green, the teal is actually in the middle. So that's nice. The pink might stand a little far out. So maybe what I should do is add a little bit, or actually, maybe what I need to do is rinse this out and add this purple to the pink. Here's our pink, which I guess I shouldn't forget that it is going to be purpley because of the navy that was on there. Let's just help and add a little bit of some purple and stir this up. This is a lot more purple on the yarn than the water looks. So I think I'm not going to worry about the teal being too much in the middle. Again, I think if if this as a set feels really out of balance, there's some things we can do. And some of those things include over dyeing later on. So at this stage, I'm now going to think a minute. I'm going to think a minute. At this stage, I think I need to just take a deep breath and proceed to then let's see how things might be in a little while. And man, I'm wishing that it was summer right now so I could just have this outside and just leave it to sit. But I think instead what I'm going to do is cover these three and clean up a little bit. There's some leftover dye in these cups. I will, in other containers, try to save it that I'll use, and I'll leave no dye behind at some point. Probably not this video. But I do think I now want to go start heating the pink and the blue. The plan was to do cool vat followed by steam setting, and we are still somewhat doing a bit of that, but this pink being weird makes me want to heat set it. And the turquoise is a color that makes me nervous because of its tendency to bleed. So we are going to shift things. Now I am going to come in because I've got more of this navy Presoak, and I am increasing the volume of water by about approximately 4 cups each. And then I am going to turn the heat on low. The pink is in a larger pot than the blue, but having it on low will just let things slowly heat up. I have no idea why the pink is behaving in this way. I've made stock solutions with it, so I am really unsure what's going on there. And why it's acting just like it's pearlescent, like it's spiraling. Can you see that? It's just spiraling in the pot. And I've used this color before, so I don't know. Ooh, that's actually looking quite purple and really, really nice. Okay, I'm gonna let these heat up fairly slowly. I'm gonna set the other ones aside. We'll decide how to proceed with those, I guess, in a bit, but I think I am gonna go ahead and wait an hour. I'm not planning on turning up the heat, so on low, and given that everything is cool right now, it might not get it very warm in that hour, but we'll see. After about an hour on super low heat, there is still color in both of the pans, but it is like a lot less color. The pots are just, I would say it's just warm. They're not that hot because I've had it on not quite the lowest setting, but very close to the lowest setting. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn off the heat, put covers on these, and let it sit overnight. It's possible I might need to do some full immersion and heat it up all the way in the morning, but at least I think we've got all of our pink dye. Yeah, I think all that pink dye is at least in solution, which was a part of the battle and the reason why I decided to do this. And since I was going to do it with the pink, I may as well do it with the blue because it was here. So anyway, I am going to let it sit covered overnight, and then tomorrow, or tomorrow or a day thereafter, we'll add more acid and either steam set the yarn if we think that that's all that it needs because the dye bath is clear, or we will do full immersion dyeing. It has been 2 days, and remember that we applied a little bit of heat, but we didn't entirely heat set this. So here is our pink, which actually is looking really, really good. Right now, ooh, and especially when I squeeze it out, I do see a difference between the yak and some of the other yarn. Those are some very beautiful berry purple tones with just a hint of color left. As for our blue, I did check this yesterday morning and I saw some color left. But given the vast amount of color in here, that's actually not bad at all. Let me set these aside. We're definitely going to need to heat set everything. We will potentially use these baths for that, but I want to see what the other 3 colors look like before we heat set. All right, here are all of our colors. And so the question is going to be if the greens are okay, but here is our purple, which again has a hint of color left, but not bad given that we've applied no heat. I'm going to stick this in here. I'm not expecting that there would be a lot of color transfer, and I'm going to move it like this because this sort of shows that color progression so far. And now let's look at our greens. One thing, there's definitely some color left in here. One thing I've realized is that, ooh, we've definitely got some breaking. What? Whoa. From our emerald? That's pretty. Or maybe that's not actually. I forgot that I had navy. That's probably it's less likely that it's breaking and more likely that there's just a pocket where we didn't really get as much color coverage. That is a lot more likely, honestly. I was like, oh my goodness. So the problem is this is a fairly bluish green already. Let's take a look at this that we try to make more teal. I realized there's definitely blue left in here. This again had no heat at all. I definitely realize those are really, really close. Those are too close to each other, I think. Sorry, what I was trying to say is I've definitely realized that it would have been a lot easier for me to work on this color progression if I was doing a few things differently. I'm going to go ahead and add this blue to the blue pot that we have on the stove. I feel like it's pretty hard to see what these colors are, but I think that I could have gone for a more yellowish green, but I wasn't very into that contrast. So I think that that would have worked, but I think I do want to try to add more blue to this. This is the teal. It's still not quite as pigmented as the others. And so I think that if I can get it feeling more of a blue-green, then that could help a lot. So I think, goodness, I might want to get a whole gram of the True Turquoise and put that on here. I think that that's probably what I'm inclined to do, but while I'm doing that, I'm going to start steam setting these. I'm going to put it in a steamer basket on the stovetop. Okay, here is our yarn into the steamer basket. Ooh, look at those neps. That looks really cool. The camera is absolutely overexposed right now, just because I wanted to try to show some of the contrast that you see. I think that if I can quote fix that one color, that things will then be pretty good. But I'm gonna wait until this heats up and then I'll set a timer. I'm gonna steam set this for 40 minutes. Why not? Why not do 40 minutes? And then I will remove this batch to let it cool and then do the green and the blue that I am satisfied with. As for that color, we're trying to shift to be a bit more teal. I'm gonna just put it in this cool bath that had the blue left over from this and the blue left over from just the True Turquoise. This is where we will dye it in here eventually, but why not put the yarn in while we're waiting? There is no harm in that. But I'm gonna go mix 1 gram of True Turquoise off camera, and don't worry, I'll put on my respirator mask and safety glasses and gloves while we're doing it, and then we'll come back. Oh no, I thought I was filming and I wasn't. Sometimes that happens when I'm just turning the camera on. But I added about half of I suppose I mixed about 1.03 grams of True Turquoise, and I'm just coming in to add the rest. So what I was saying, and there's a little bit more in the cup that I can dissolve and add in a moment. But what I was saying is that I don't have any real measurement or sense of how much blue I have added thus far to the yarn, because we took some that was dissolved from another dye bath. We took, goodness, what else did we do? I had some residual left in a cup that I dissolved and added, and so really I don't know how much was in there. Certainly was enough to shift the color to be a nice green. But looking at it, I'm still not sure if this is enough to shift us into a teal. But hey, we're trying, so maybe this is a good video of like shifting colors to get the color that you want. Oh my goodness. Okay, I am trying to carefully mix this without making a mess. See, the problem is I keep looking at the yarn trying to be like, oof, is that the color I want? But all the dye is in solution here. It has not started to bind to our yarn. So there's a chance that this is going to be way too much color and it'll then feel too saturated and won't fit in with the other progression that we have. Let's add some acid. 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I am now going to turn this on. We're not going to cool that. We are just going to vat dye and heat this until we see if we've been shifting our color. And I think we finally are. It is feeling, I'm probably going to stay in my hands, it is feeling less green overall. So that is, now as a reference for myself, this is the green that we have. So if it's not quite yet, if it's shifting, that is good. The problem is it might be too dark. So that's what we don't know. But I am going to stir this occasionally as this heats up, and I will come back in about 30 minutes and we'll check in. So as I reflect on this, I think the big place where I went wrong was not doing just a test on single skeins, so that way I would have an opportunity to adjust my color recipes before proceeding. So that's just one mistake. But the other thing that I really should have done to perfectly get a sort of fade set with different semi-solid tonals is to have done that color mixing exercise, the triangle color mixing exercise that I love, starting with 3 primaries plus the navy or what have you. And then we could have hit and nailed not just the color intensity, but the hues that I really wanted. So, you know, I sort of was going for it, flying off the seat of my pants, but also I was doubting myself a lot. And because there are times with certain yarn bases and colors when you set up the cool vat, sometimes things strike immediately. So then when things weren't, I found myself second guessing myself and second guessing the techniques that I know work great. Not to mention, I'm a little afraid of true turquoise, and possibly using it at like a 1% depth of shade may cause bleeding. It can be a tricky color, but I really wanted to go for it. And so, yes, I think that an easier way to set this up would have been by doing some color mixing, even if I wasn't going off of a triangle exercise. If I had picked, say, the turquoise, the green, and the magenta, and then mixed my midpoints, not necessarily at a 1-to-1 ratio, but at a ratio where I was visually satisfied with the color I was seeing, then maybe I would have been more likely to hit that color I was going for. But I had my doubts about the sour apple, mainly because I think it is less pigmented compared to some of those other more jewel toned colors already. And so therefore this might not end up too dark, but it also might, because the other green, it might not work. But worst case scenario, it's still going to be a very, very beautiful color, and I'll just have to re-dye a batch for these sets. So yeah, I mean, this is all a learning process. Typically when I do samplers and stuff, it's not always like, I haven't very often gone after something with intent with multiple different hues to work together as one set. And so surprisingly, this is one of the first times that I think I'm doing this with that level of intent without knowing the kinds of colors that I will get in advance. I just realized I'm wearing sort of a teal colored shirt. Not intentional. But I think that my response as things happen in this video is also indicative of another thing that I've mentioned in the past. When I go about dyeing yarn and I approach the process as, I wonder what will happen if I do X, Y, Z, it is so easy to get really excited by the results and love how things turn out. When I'm asking a question or when I'm just playing with a technique and I'm letting the process take me where the process goes, it's very easy to be really excited. The times when I have a more specific vision in my head and I just go for it and then I get nervous, it's hard, because when you have expectations and you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't meet this expectation, will I be disappointed? And so sometimes when approaching something new, it helps to reframe it. Like, I wonder what will happen if I do this, and reminding myself that worst case scenario, you over dye it to a black. Okay, I suppose worst case scenario, you burn the yarn to a crisp, or you have something that bleeds forever and you can never get that clear. So there are some annoying problems that can happen. But in terms of the final color, really the worst that happens is you don't like the final color. And so I'm trying to shift this and fix this so it works as a 5 mini skein set. But if I don't nail this color, it'll still be okay. And that is something that's important to remind myself, because I can be overcritical at times. And so I think that as you're going in and starting your own dyeing adventure, keep your mindset in mind or be intentional with the way you approach it, because it is really easy to be disappointed if you're going for, you have a specific vision of a specific yarn you want and then you don't hit that. I have a dyeing to knit that probably has come out already where a similar thing, I was like, man, this technique didn't work the way I envisioned on this yarn, so I was a little bummed, but when I knit with it, the colors did exactly what I was wanting to do on the yarn, even though it looked like the color sections were bigger. It ended up working out as I had wanted. So it's worth keeping in mind. But anyway, when those 30 to 40 minutes are up, we'll go back and check in on the color. All right, most of the color has cleared in the pot. You could see that our teal is steamy and it is now definitely different from the green. Maybe not as different as one might want, but I'm gonna put this back in the pot. In a minute, there's a hint more color to absorb, so I'll be bringing it completely up to temp, but I thought that it was worth taking a moment to take a look, also to see if I might want a little more blue, but maybe I should also leave well enough alone, because, well, let me overexpose this because then you can see, but this purple and pink aren't that, you know, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. I am happy with this. Maybe this could be a little more blue. These two are pretty close, but I think that as a set, let's get our purple and then our other purple. I think as a set, these 5 work. So maybe that's not perfect, but I am happy. So now we need to finish heat setting everything. I still have 20 minutes of steaming I want to do on these guys. This I'm going to put back in the pot. But okay, I'm more confident now. And because both of these still had some color in their respective more cool vat water, I am going to steam them separately because I would like to avoid color transfer since they are both reasonably close to that teal. I am happy for so many reasons. One, that we were able to shift it and it doesn't feel too dark compared to the rest of the colors, but also it does feel like a different color and fits in that range. I'm glad that we shifted it from that sour apple. I suppose I could have added more sour apple, but given that the emerald green gave us a very like green, maybe a little bit pine, but it's still a very green, I was afraid that if I pumped up the volume of that sour apple, it might just feel very, very similar in tone and not different enough. So shifting this to get more of a teal was a little harder because I was starting with the more yellow green, but easier because I didn't start with yellow. So I am really excited. I am really curious to see how this will look on that yak, which was so dark already, and we've layered on all these deep colors. But let's go take another look at that teal pot. But off camera, I am going to, once the 40 minutes are up, remove the pink and purple from the steamer basket, and then steam the blue, and then steam the green, let everything cool completely so we can wash it. But let's go check back in on that turquoise, which we're not steaming, we're gonna finish immersion dyeing. I just wanted to show a few things. One, there's some staining around the edge of the pot. That seems to happen with this color. We are not yet at like a boil or anything, but we've basically cleared and we haven't even hit a simmer. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and let this heat for 30 minutes. Then I'm gonna turn off the heat and let it cool completely here in the pot. Yeah, this is different than what I'm doing with the others, but hopefully we won't see a massive difference once it's time to start washing. I filmed this summer mini skein mini-series episode before I did my color challenge, where this true turquoise dye was really a star. And we talked a lot about the washing of this true turquoise. So I did see some bleeding in our teal mixture and with the blue on its own. The other colors did pretty well, but in all cases, just a little bit of soaking and some rinses. The water did eventually go clear. So this was not the most troublesome washing that I've ever experienced. Phew! I did wash in cool tap water using some dish soap when necessary, and then I put all of the yarn in my spin dryer and hung it up to dry. So now we can see what these colors actually look like. Here is the finished dry yarn, and oh man, there's a lot going on in each of these, and part of it is because of some variation between the skeins themselves, but there's also part of this that is because we had 3 different fiber contents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and twist these up so that way we can set up this mat with a more organized view. But before we do that, I just wanted to point out, and let's focus on the blue. There's a range of colors that we see in here on the same bases. For example, this is one of the platinums, and then we also see some lighter on some of the platinum, and the same we see dustier and lighter because of the layered colors. So I'm curious to see how consistent these tonals will be. I'm not gonna lay each one out straight individually, but this hopefully we'll get a sense of the different depth as we look at each of the colors. And I guess maybe I will go through each of the 5 colors really quickly before we try to make conclusions across the whole thing. Let's take a closer look at each of the 5 colors. In each of the cases, the vat yak will be on the very far left and our tweed on the right, and with the platinum sock sort of in the middle left. Here is our green, the teal, the blue, the purple, and then finally the pink, which I suppose is also sort of a berry purple here. We successfully got 5 distinct colors. I think that the teal and green feel very similar. It's not quite as an extreme step, but I think that if we look at each yarn base on its own, which we're going to do in a moment, we might see those differences a little better, because I think that the different tones from the 3 yarn bases made it harder for me to see the differences there. I think that if you look at each one individually, then the similarities, actually on camera, in person, you can definitely feel the difference between the green and the teal. And let's look at them each on their own. Now, the teal, the step between the green and the teal is definitely closer than the other colors, but I think it still works. So here is the platinum sock. Here is the tweed. And then finally, here is the vat yak. As a reminder, the bare yarn bases that we used did vary in their tone. The titanium sock is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. The Donegal DK is 85% superwash merino, 15% nep. And these neps didn't absorb any color. So that, I guess, limits the amount of fiber in there that can draw color. The colors overall feel slightly less saturated than the titanium over on the far right, but they're still brighter than the vat yak, which is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, 10% nylon. And as far as the yarn bases go, this is the most saturated to start with, and our final color is also quite saturated. Now the differences between these three yarn bases might be a little bit amplified because if our titanium sock is absorbing color faster than the others, then maybe it absorbed more than the other two. It's hard to say 100% for sure. The colors between these two could have been slightly more similar if we had dyed them separately versus all in one pot at the same time, but the final colors are gorgeous. Now these three yarn bases have visual differences from one another. When you look at them, they're slightly different colors. And so you can still have differences between different yarn bases depending on that shade of white, or really off-white, that non-bleached fibers are. There are some differences in those colors. Some might be a little more yellow than others. And so when you're dealing with saturated colors like this, those slight differences may not make a huge difference on the final color, but it could also, especially with more pastels, make a difference in the hue, which is why sometimes a very, very pale blue almost starts to look a little bit minty, just because of the balance of that yellow that is present. As for our layered effects, we did dye each of these slightly differently. So the green and the purple were just this cool vat. And so you can see elements of the navy, and there's still some lightness in each of these. The pink and the blue, we did add a little bit of heat at the beginning. And then we did heat them immersion style later on. So we still have light and dark because that navy was dyed the same for all of the yarn, but there is a bit more overall saturation to those. And then our teal, we did this many times and added more dye. It is technically more saturated than a lot of the other colors in the terms of the total amount of dye that we added, but I think that it still works even though it is close to the green. It is close. I think that maybe if I was going to redo this, and this isn't enough that I'm going to re-dye it because I'm very happy with how this turned out, maybe I would have, just as I was adding more green here, or sorry, more blue to this teal, maybe I would have added a little more yellow to that green. So, you know, I wasn't happy with the colors, and I just sort of went for it to try to shift it and fix it, and I'm happy with where we ended up, but it didn't quite work the way that I thought, just planning wise, which is why it's worth doing a proper swatch of colors before scaling things up to make sure that I have the levels right. And I would say that by going by the seat of my pants a bit, I am really happy with how these colorways turned out. Which of the yarn bases is your favorite? I like each of them a lot. That yak is just a gorgeous base. That's the one over on the far left. Titanium has been a favorite of mine for a while, and I haven't dyed a lot of tweed, but I have to say I really like how well these nips show up. I was a little afraid that they would feel lost after going such a saturated color, but since there are some lighter camel colored brown in addition to the more black, you can still feel that tweed, and I think that it is really, really fun. So I'm really glad actually that I did this on all three bases. But I think especially I'm glad I added the yak to the mix because originally that was not part of my plan. And so it was sort of just nice to compare this on three different bases. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot from this project. And maybe one of those lessons is that I could have done a little bit more color planning that would have made things easier on myself for creating a colorway like this. I absolutely could have edited down the entire process more, but I thought that there was a benefit to showing my troubleshooting where I had a color that maybe I wanted to shift a little bit more. So I think that there is a benefit to sharing that process. But had I taken some steps like looking at the different premixed colors at a 1% depth of shade before trying the mixing, that might have helped, because then it would be a reminder, okay, this color is way more intense than that color. But also, had I started with 3 premixed colors for that second layer, say the pink, the blue, and then a green, I then could have on their own mixed them. And again, not at a 1-to-1 ratio, but I could have mixed those to create those intermediate colors. And that may have made the adjustment a little bit easier than going from our greenest shade and trying to bring that to a teal. So sometimes a little bit of planning can help. But again, I hope that sharing my troubleshooting and uncertainty and thought process along the way was really helpful. I know that I want to play around with some more tonal fade sets on purpose. I have some sweater ideas in my head of things I want to dye for someday, maybe not soon. But I am absolutely excited to play around with this. And the more I try new things or new to me things, the more I learn and grow as a dyer. So if you appreciate my journey and have been a fan of ChemKnits for a while and want to support us on another level, I do have a Patreon. There will be a link down below where you can learn more about that. But again, please make sure that you're subscribed and go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Engaging with these videos is the biggest way that you can help support the content here. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and stay tuned because tomorrow night we will have another summer mini skein mini-series video, and I cannot wait for you to see what we create. Thank you so much for watching.